Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to NerdTube. And we are doing a season 2 review of Young Rock. I'm here with my fellow NerdTuber as well as our wrestling expert, D Jose 101. How you doing, mate?
This is the recap of Young Rock Season 2, pal. Only on Peacock and wherever else you can stream it. Ha ha ha. Anyway,
And wherever else is definitely the word for me.
yep.
Um, being in the UK. I just want to say first of all, before we start breaking down each episode and talking about the season, talking about this entire season, I would like to say that I have enjoyed this season as well as last season, and this season definitely got us more involved in Rock's life, young Rock's life, that is coming into wrestling. A part of his life I was quite familiar with, to tell you the truth, because I saw him making his debut and all of that sort of stuff in the WWE. So yeah, I remember all of that. But still, we got some other periods of his life, as you do with this particular show, as well as Rock running for president in the year 2032 and his interactions with Randall Park, which is absolutely hilarious. I mean,
Yeah. Randall, like trying to come off as cool and like trying to play it all straight, and The Rock just looks at him like, "Come on, man, like, dude, no."
but before I get your ideas on this season, I just want to say that I do, it is pretty cool seeing as a retro wrestling fan, somebody who no longer watches wrestling but was a massive wrestling fan, seeing this slice of life and seeing all his interaction with so many amazing names, especially in the early '80s when he was a child.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. It really is, like fishing with Andre the Giant and all of that sort of stuff. It's absolutely fascinating, and how cool Macho Man Randy Savage was when Rocky Johnson was down on his luck, and the relationship between his mum and Miss Elizabeth and all of these things. Absolutely, it's like there's a lot of fascinating things, but at the same time, I do feel that all of his entire history was kind of played for laughs, and it's very vanilla. Like even the serious moments were played for laughs,
yeah.
and it's hard to know how much this is genuine, and how much of this is bullshit, just there to somehow make jokes and stuff like that. But overall, I still had a good time.
Yeah,
I don't. I know this is not 100% accurate, but I still had a good time. What about yourself?
I had a great time with this season, honestly, and I just have to give a shout out to like the cast and crew. And for me, the MVP of the entire series thus far in season 2 is the person that played Rock's grandma, just because she takes no shit. I love the fact that like she tells the FBI like, "Oh, you need to go kill yourselves" and shit like that. And she just doesn't take any shit from anybody,
Yeah,
as we'll get into. But yeah, and like I'm gonna
she's
go
very
ahead and
gangster.
yeah, she plays it as a
Yeah.
gangster, and then like I said in the chat, we do a chat, and season 2, episode 8 is my favorite episode, and we're gonna break that one down too. Just as an old school '90s wrestling fan, that popped me. But it's amazing how they nailed like the accuracy of like Andre the Giant, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Jerry Lawler, and Jeff Jarrett, Brian Christopher, so many others. That if you're a wrestling fan, you definitely need to go out of your way to see the show. I do think though that I'd like to see Young Rock be portrayed a little bit more seriously in certain moments, like with them touching on racism. Even then, they kind of played it for laughs, and I wish they would have had like an in-depth conversation about it. Like how Family Matters and Fresh Prince and shows like that back then used to have. I wish they would have
Mm.
done stuff like that. But I get it. It's a comedy. You want to try to keep the audience laughing for, most of the show. And I think they achieved that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, without that, there was some serious periods in wrestling, but yeah, they definitely like kind of washed over it
Hmm.
to make it a bit more funnier. So I remember we'll start. We'll talk about every episode very briefly, and there were 12 episodes this season. Um, I remember like the first episode was quite remarkable because it was a Christmas episode,
Yeah.
and we see Rock making Dwayne Johnson, that is making. And by the way, you have to apologize. We might say Rock, and we might mean Rocky Johnson or Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
So,
We'll have to probably clarify and just say, like,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
But we see Dwayne walking in, obviously doing a Christmas movie, and he's got like this crutch, and it's like a shotgun with fucking cartridges. and stuff like that. And he's obviously making a film, but you don't realize that until the director goes cut, and
Yeah.
then because one of the little girls wasn't able to say her line correctly. And what was so great about this episode is that because every episode kind of begins with like Rock being asked a question and then using his life history as a way of answering the question, and then that's when we get the flashbacks. But this one was unique. Even though it was the first episode, it was very unique because we had all three young Rock characters in
And
this
this is
first episode.
and this is probably going to be one of the few times that you actually see every incarnation of the Rock come together. Like this is the one time you'll see kid, teenage, young adult, and like Rock at 40, as Young Dewey put it, which was hilarious.
Yeah,
He was like,
yeah,
"Wow, that's us at 40," and I was like, "Yeah, I think life turned out pretty well for Young Dewey there."
and it
But
was
the
it was
concept was
basically
hilarious of the fact that like he got that fucking knockoff Cabbage Patch Kid, and like Christmas just turned out to always be shit for him until like they did like the Ghost of Christmas Past or whatever the fuck it was, that's been
yeah,
done.
it was a hybrid of a Christmas Carol and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, and it was basically learning to appreciate what Christmas is. I was kind of surprised that young Dewey got a shitty Cabbage Patch Kid present, considering his parents were really well off in
Mm-hmm.
the early 80s. They were making bank. They
Yeah,
were living on Hawaii and stuff
yeah,
like that.
because the WWF, yes, that's right, F had exploded at
Yeah,
that time. Yeah, and
yeah,
I'm gonna call it WWF. Fuck you, Panda people. But
yeah. It's
anyway,
really
getting
weird.
back
Like
on
it's really
topic.
weird. Like WWE didn't feel like it rolled off the tongue, but after saying that for a long time
I
now,
know you get used to it.
WWF sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it was good. We saw basically this entire episode. We're just appreciating what you got,
Mm-hmm.
for Christmas and stuff like that. With Dewey getting young Dewey getting a shitty present, teenage Dewey, uh, basically helping with his dad, working in a mall,
Mm-hmm.
just being together and stuff, and a young adult Dewey basically spending time with his coach and his coach's mum,
Yeah.
and just making the most out of that. And there were some sort of like hijinks and fuck ups during the course of that episode, but overall everything turned out to be all right in the end, and they were all happy. They were just happy for what they got, and that was basically the episode, really, wasn't
and
it?
the guy that played Andre the Giant, he's like the Godfather. He's like that moral compass of like, Dewey, you have to learn to appreciate what you have, type of thing. And
Yeah,
Andre was. I do believe that Andre was that guy for Dewey as a kid, like kind of taking on like that Godfather role of like, I'm going to teach you things in life that your family won't teach you. But
he was, yeah. Andre the Giant in this entire series. He came across as a very wise man.
mm-hmm.
He really is, and it was good to see him in this Santa Claus role. But yeah, that was basically the first episode. Um, so all right, on to episode 2. This is called $7. Now $7 was basically, I'll read the synopsis here. In Calgary, 1996, Dwayne
Oh
struggled
no,
to
dude,
find his footing.
you're off because I got it. I can read you the episode order and tell you what it
Okay,
is because I've got the wiki. Okay, unprecedented fatherhood. As the 2032 election nears, Dwayne reflects on what it means to be a father in 1984. And basically what happens is okay, this is a moment in Black history, but a moment in wrestling nonetheless. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas had won the WWF Tag Team titles from the Wild Samoans in 1984, and that was a cool moment in pro wrestling during its time.
you sure that was episode 2, not episode
Yeah,
3?
I've got the
Okay,
wiki. I can send you the wiki if you need it.
no problem, no problem. $7 on there.
Yeah,
Okay, fine. Okay, we'll go
that's
with
the
you. We'll go
next
with you.
episode. Yeah,
Okay.
but okay, yeah, breaking it down. Basically, Tony Johnson and Rocky Atlas became the WWF Tag Team Champions.
Tony Atlas, you mean?
Yeah, Tony Atlas and
Tony.
Rocky Johnson won the
Yeah.
tag team titles, and The Rock started getting jealous because Rocky was spending all his time with Tony as they were the WWF Tag Team Champions and all that kind of shit.
No, but
And
what it was, Jose, is that Tony Atlas, so Rock would be getting the shit beaten out of him, do the hot tag.
and
Tony Atlas
Tony
would
would
come
be
in,
taking
clean
all the
house,
credit. Yeah.
yeah, clean house, and get the fucking free.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it made Tony Atlas look great, and it made made the Soul Man not just look like a chump.
And it would play a role into a later episode we're going to get into, the Backyard Barbecue episode. But yeah.
Yeah, which was a fantastic episode, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fantastic episode, yeah. But this was what I liked about this is that I think this is the episode where Rock's mum was kind of using the real life animosities,
yeah,
to like to sell tickets, and they would have a little bit. Was this the episode where they had beef on the radio?
No.
Fair enough. But I think this was the episode where
this is the one where Rock. This is the one where Rock like got jealous. Like Dewey got jealous of his dad because all the success he had, and they really weren't spending that much time together. And then it kind of fast forwards to Nashville in 1987 when he arrives to Nashville, and he's like, "I don't understand. Like, what the fuck we're doing here? Like, I thought." Dad, I thought you made it big in the WWF, and then Downtown Bruno basically
Harvey Wimpleman,
picks up the Rock, and they live together in an apartment. And
was that episode 4?
No, this is all within the first episode.
Oh, okay.
Because you remember how like Rock would kind of like fast forward sometimes in between his life. He does that here in this one, and he also tries to adjust to the Canadian Football League too. All in this same episode. Like in the college football, he's so used to the rules being one way. And then in the Canadian Football League, it's like, oh, there's 12 guys on the side. Or, oh, Dewey, you're offside. Or, oh, man, you're doing this the wrong way. And long story short, he didn't make the squad. He made the practice squad.
Yeah. I do recall that he never really found his footing doing that. So, yeah. But it was good seeing obviously the beef between Tony and Rocky Johnson, and where that led to. It's unfortunate. Like after this and after leaving the WWE, he never really got back in there to have a decent singles career. Who knows where his career would have went? But yeah. It was once again a fascinating episode, and also I think this was the episode where Rock's grandmother, because she was on trial and stuff, she kind of gave the reins to her daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As well. So her mum's great, by the way. All the characters are great.
Oh, yeah. And I have to give the casting director and all that like such huge props, because the guy they got to play Rocky Johnson just stuns me. It's like, oh my God, he almost looks exactly like Rocky Johnson. Like there's so much there.
Yeah. I thought when I saw season 1 and I saw the guy playing Rocky Johnson, I thought, oh my God, this guy looks like Dwayne's dad.
Yeah, Dead Ringer.
I couldn't believe it, especially when Dwayne's dad was in his prime. You know what I mean? And yeah, and he's absolutely hilarious, by the way. His dad is so funny. As well. So he's always very happy-go-lucky, brighter side of life looking and stuff like that.
Okay, I'll let you.
Sorry, which is kind of different to how Rock would talk about him, which is weird in a way, because Rock kind of, before the show came out, Rock would talk about his dad and he was a bit of a hard man, but in this show, he's always fucking smiling and always trying to keep things sweet. It's a bit weird, a bit of a contrast there, but anyway.
Okay, and then the next one is $7, so you could take this one.
Okay, well, this is the one where he basically trying to find his footing for the Calgary Stampeders in the Canadian Football League, and he is fearing that he'll be cut, and he spends a life-changing day with a teammate, and also, but as we cut to 2032 as well, we see the online troll appear, somebody from his past, played by Sean Astin of all people. Like I was surprised they got such a famous actor, to play this troll, considering we all know it's Sean fucking Astin, but apparently Sean Astin has issues with Dwayne Johnson, and because Dwayne in 2032 is running for president, these issues might derail his campaign. So
and this is the one where Rock can't figure out, like Dwayne can't figure out like how to play Canadian football to save his life. Like it's that one where he's like, oh, okay, like Dewey, you're on the wrong side, or Dewey, you're supposed to be over here like guarding this guy, and he just cannot figure it out. And it's always fucking cold in Canada too. That was the one thing I noticed in this episode.
Yeah, it
It
was
was always
snowing a lot.
cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an okay episode, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, a slice of life of Rock's life before we knew at this particular period of his life, before we knew the inevitable was around the corner. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just basically a preview to that.
Yeah, there's not a lot
Well,
to talk about really in this episode. It was just the fact that basically the ending came when Rock kind of gets cut from the team, and all he has is $7 in his pocket, and an alligator ate one of his dollars. So he would have had $8 in his pocket, but he didn't have much to show for it at the end. And then he could not admit to his dad that he failed. And also, as a side plot, Rocky Johnson ended up working for Circuit City selling busted appliances and shit like that, like broken cameras and whatever was hot at that time in the mid '90s. Because
yeah.
the Rock's dad had kind of fallen off of pro wrestling for the most part during that time.
So what's next on the list?
In Your Blood, Hawaii, 1984. This is the one where Leah prepares for a trial because the FBI finds her, and they tell her, like, no, you cannot do anything because you threatened that promoter in the first season, Greg Yao.
And
And
what it was as well is that she was under house arrest, but she kept leaving the
she
fucking house.
she said, fuck that, yeah. And then, like, the agent kept telling her, like, ma'am, you cannot be here. You cannot go to the grocery store. You cannot do this. You can't do that. And she just said, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when she's like, I'm going to the grocery store. I need to go get eggs. And he's like, all right, fine, we'll go to the grocery store. But after that, you need to be at home. And she just
She was
wouldn't care.
manipulating the FBI guy a lot as well. But I think this is also the episode where she says, well, if you're going to go to court, get yourself a good white lawyer.
Yep. Get yourself a good white lawyer. Yep.
Yeah.
In the meantime, and this is the episode where tension starts to play a factor in between Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, because, like you said, Rocky would be the one selling and doing all the work, and then Tony would get the tag, come in, hit the finish, and then he'd get all the glory. And they started planting the seeds for the backyard barbecue, which made you think that Rocky and Tony were going to break up.
Yeah, for sure. And also, this is the one where Dewey meets his nemesis, which is ended up being played by Sean Astin in 2032.
Yep.
And so we see him so we see that as well.
Yep.
Was like, I think it starts off with him basically saying that he's the son of Rocky Johnson. Nobody believes him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could just ask his dad to come to school one day, but no, he has to take the long route by bringing in belts and shit like that.
Where's my tag team title? And then it's just gone, and then he's got it, and then they leave the janitor on the fucking roof.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that was excellent.
And they kind of did a throwback to a ladder match, which was funny, even though ladder matches weren't really a thing at that time. I mean, they kind of were, but yeah, they kind of were, like, in the Canadian territories, but not so much in America.
So what's next?
Okay, and then In the Dark, Nashville, 1987. Rocky promises he will find an event. This is probably the funniest one to me, almost, just because the dad just didn't give a shit. Nashville, 1987. Rocky promises he'll find a family, an apartment by the time Ada arrives from Hawaii, but time runs out, and Dwayne has to settle into, like, life in Nashville.
I remember this episode because Rocky Johnson wasn't basically doing his parental duties.
Mm-hmm.
He was letting Dwayne do what the fuck he wants.
Yep.
And he was just trying to make some money, but he also left Dwayne under the supervision of Backyard Bruno.
Yep.
And Harvey Wippleman and Bruno. Well, I mean, you mentioned the grandma. He's fantastic in this. His laugh like
Downtown Bruno. Yeah, Downtown Bruno.
Not Backyard. Downtown Bruno.
Yeah, Downtown Bruno was also hilarious. Harvey Wippleman. If he's not in the Hall of Fame already, they need to put him in there.
No wonder, you could see, was it a year or two ago, Rock gave him a car.
Gave him a truck.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It meant a lot to him. So, I mean, and he basically became a surrogate dad, like more of a surrogate uncle.
Yeah.
I mean, but those things, like, he would be on the toilet.
Yeah, he'd cook the eggs on the toilet. Like, he would have the egg. He'd have the
yeah,
bathroom as his kitchen at the same time. It was so weird.
but he'd be taking an actual shit
Yep.
while he's cooking the fucking eggs,
Eggs.
like with his pants are down and everything. What the
Yep.
fuck? Oh god, that's a hygiene nightmare, man.
Yep.
I can't imagine that toilet and the kitchen in the same room.
Yeah.
Jesus,
It's one of those apartments that has everything and nothing in it all at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the mum comes back, gets really pissed off with Rocky Johnson because he hasn't been keeping up with his parental duties.
Yep.
Dwayne should be in school, but he isn't. But
Yeah.
because he's such a big lad at that age, that he can get away with truanting because
Yep.
people think he's an adult. So yeah, and this is like kind of like a period where Dwayne
The
Johnson's
marriage
mum
was
and dad,
strained. Yeah.
yeah,
The
it was
marriage.
pretty strange. Yeah,
Yep. It
but
started to strain, but I thought it was a really good episode.
yeah, for sure.
Yep. And then
what's next?
What business? This is the episode where he gets cut from the Canadian Football League altogether. And then The Rock goes to his dad and he says, "Hey, I want you to train me." And Rocky Johnson's like, "Dude, no, I'm not going to do it." He's kind of hesitant. And then Atta is like, "This is his dream. This is my dream. You know, I want him to get in the business. He's got blood on my side and your side to do this." And he's like, the main thing about this episode was Rocky kept telling his kid, like, "Dude, you got to sell. You have to sell." And this is a common criticism that's a generational thing because we do this too. Like, we now have become the kind of fans that look at these new kids today and go, "God, these kids don't know how to wrestle," or "God, these kids don't know how to sell for shit." And in 20 years, that's going to be you guys. To you young guys watching this now, that's going to be you after your generation passes, because we all go through this. Every generation has had that criticism of wrestling.
What I remember most about this episode, and forgive me if I'm wrong, and I'm thinking about one further ahead, is that this is the episode where his grandma goes, when she talks to Chief Peter Marvere in the skies and says, "Oh, I'm so happy that our son is no longer chasing oblong balls and he's fulfilling his destiny." Yep. And also that they were training for wrestling in a boxing ring as well.
Yep. And you also get to see Little Joe, Roman Reigns, which was probably
the best. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, which is probably the best. It's the best tease they've done for a WrestleMania match that you're ever going to get, because you know it's coming. I mean, the reports are that Rock is freed up, but I don't want to see it. But
I don't want to see. I really don't want to see it because like we're talking like a 50-year-old Rock who's ring rusty as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he will need to have several wrestling matches just to get ready for WrestleMania, and even then, you know, there's every chance he might get injured before WrestleMania.
Yep,
because the guy doesn't wrestle anymore.
But the tease aspect of it was cool, but not that I want to see it though. But I did enjoy the tease when it was like, "Come on, someone drop me, acknowledge me," and I just popped at that. I was like, "Yes, okay, good." So they pretty much kind of gave it away that something might happen. Yeah.
So Roman. The funny thing is that we saw Roman Reigns at Joe, but we didn't see his brother Rosie.
Mm-hmm.
In there. So I wonder where he would have been, because theoretically he should have been there.
And you have to wonder where, like, I know Rikishi was on the road, I think, at the time, but you also have to wonder where the Usos were too, because they're all in that fucking family.
Yeah, and one of the Wild Samoans was Roman's dad. Yeah, one half. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that was a really cool episode. Yeah,
and then he turns and then like basically so okay, if you haven't seen it, the episode is basically just like Rocky giving Dwayne so much shit because he doesn't know how to sell. He doesn't know how to, do this and that. And then he turns to Pat Patterson. And I thought the guy that played Pat Patterson too was also fantastic. I thought that was great.
They're hamming up the Frenchness though. I mean, the French Canadianness, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. But we're getting to a period now as well where you are looking out for Easter eggs, like, oh wow, like,
as a wrestling fan, you start looking out for this kind of shit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Okay, Kiss and Release, Hawaii, 1984. Dewey starts to kind of become a troublemaker at school, and Ada goes to Andre like, "Hey man, you got to talk to him. Can you help him out?" And meanwhile, this is when the grandma, she's the MVP of this whole episode, It's the one where she's in trial for extortion and all that kind of shit, and she just doesn't take shit from anybody.
Dude, she's
This whole
bribing the
episode.
fucking jury and
Yep.
judge with fucking fruit.
Yep. That was the
you
best
have to
damn
have some
thing about this whole episode.
Have some fucking mangoes. And
Yep.
that sort of Jimmy Wang Yang fucking promoter as well was absolutely hilarious. As well. I'm surprised I don't know anything about him. And this is the first I really came across him.
Yep.
Was Young Rock. I never knew this person even existed until Young Rock. So, but yeah, that was an excellent episode. And obviously Dewey as well. This is the episode where Dewey and Andre go fishing, I believe.
Yeah, and I think this is when Dwayne experiences like a crush for the first time, and he's like, okay, how do I handle this? And Andre's like, dude, I'm going to be upfront with you. You know, you got to sometimes just respect it and just let it go.
No. What it was is that he was getting in trouble because he was trying to get the attention of a girl.
He was trying to impress the girl,
And so initially Andre the Giant took him fishing thinking that he was a troublemaker, but when he realized it was about women, he ended up getting the fucking wine out and started getting drunk.
Yep. Andre would do that shit in real life too. Like a lot of y'all don't know this. I mean, Zam and I know this, but Andre's the only guy I think in world history that could have 700 beers in one sitting. He did that for real. Like
yeah. Because the beer would be like a shot to him because of his size. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would be very easy for him to drink. So, all right, what's next?
Okay. An Understanding, Nashville, 1987. Ada and Rocky's marriage hits a rough patch when teenage Dwayne questions his dad's decision making, and Ada tells him the story of how she and Rocky had met, and then in 2032, Dwayne decides to confront Julian head on like Twitter and shit like that by telling him like, you're a fucking idiot. I didn't try to kill you, and yada yada yada. But
what I liked about this episode was we go further back in time.
Yeah.
Because I think Dwayne is in a bar and people think, you know, it's funny, he's trying to use the fact that he looks old to try and get alcohol and stuff, but some people realize that he's still a kid and stuff like that. There was a moment when his mum was telling the story of their youth, and some other lady thought that she was an older woman picking up a younger guy, you know, which wasn't the case. But we get to see the time period of Peter Maivia and Rocky Johnson wrestling as a tag team, which I had no idea that was the case.
I didn't even know that. And I'm like, I'm pretty well versed in pro wrestling, but I don't go back that far.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously he has her seeing, you know, Peter's daughter, and then, you know, they're falling in love and stuff like that.
And it's that secret thing of you can't date wrestlers, because that was really taboo back then. Nowadays, wrestlers date wrestlers all the fucking time.
The funny thing is, because it was taboo, it became more common than people realized.
Yep.
It was taboo, but it happened all the fucking time. Just look at the Hart family.
Hell, it was even as late as the late 90s, back when Triple H and Stephanie McMahon first met and started dating in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. That's how far it goes back. It goes way back.
Because if you're not supposed to do it, you end up doing it. So that's basically how it's saying. And the thing that made me laugh about this episode the most, I mean, it was really nice seeing Rocky and his mum falling in love, but it was how Rocky kind of got his name.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was the grandma's holding baby
Dewey.
Baby Dwayne Johnson. He does a shit in his pants. He goes, oh, he's done a Dewey. And then teenage Rock.
That's how I got my name.
He named me off the shit. Oh God, that was hilarious.
Yep.
Oh, and then, that was a stand-up moment for me.
And then this episode is the best for those of us that grew up in the 90s. Texas in 1996, when Dwayne gets his first match, and he gets to meet Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H.
Episode 8.
Yeah, this is the best episode in the whole series right here. This is the one that if you don't watch any other episode from Young Rock, watch this one if you're a fan of 90s wrestling, because the guy that played Triple H, I thought he kind of looked like a skinnier version of Billy Gunn, to be honest with you. But
I'll be honest with you, some of the look, it's very hard to find somebody who looks like somebody else. It's not that straightforward, especially when it comes to actors. But the guy they picked for Undertaker was terrible.
Yeah, you know, he looked more Hispanic than he did anything.
He was too short as well, as far as I was concerned. But I mean, considering they could I mean, what they did for Andre the Giant was as good as it was ever going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you would have thought that they would have done a better job
With
for
Undertaker.
but they tried to hide those like frailties with his hair and stuff like that.
But I did pop though when I did pop when like Austin and Rock met, and he's like, "Hey man, just go out there, go have fun, go do your thing, kid." And then the Rock is like, "I saw the Undertaker, and what he said next changed my career, changed me for the rest of my life." And Taker just without hesitation walks into the room, raises fist, "Motherfuckers!" And then the whole locker room popped. I'm like, yeah, I could picture Undertaker probably doing that just to get the boys hyped up. Like he would just come in the room and just
he was a general, wasn't he, of the dressing room. So, but the thing that made me laugh was like some of the I don't know if they're just doing this for the sake of pops or whatever, but he's talking to Stone Cold, and Stone Cold comes across as a really like down to earth dude in this.
Yeah,
but like, instead of saying yes, he would say hell yeah.
Yeah, they were throwing the catchphrases and shit. What?
And then like if he found something confusing, you go what?
Yeah, what? And I'm like, yeah, they did that clearly just for the wrestling fans that watched during that time, like we did. So it was nice to see.
At the same time, though, like him and Triple H, though, they're kind of busting each other's balls a little bit. Yeah, I mean, because you could tell, like, the way Triple H was portrayed, that this guy's ambitious.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like, he wants to get to the top.
And for those that don't know, go ahead.
But he mentioned like the Intercontinental Championship, and then Dwayne Johnson mentioned how he held it when he was 5 years old because one of his uncles won it or some shit like that.
And then when I win it, I'll send you an 8x10. You could sell it on eBay. And I'm like, damn, that makes me feel old. Number one. Number two, for those that don't know, Triple H and Rock, I don't think really got along at time on a professional level because Triple H was a part of the Clique, and they didn't like The Rock. They didn't like the fact that he was getting over, and they tried to bury him back then. But
also, what I heard, because he never fought Shawn Michaels, The Rock.
No.
And it was to do apparently with Shawn Michaels disrespecting Rock's grandmother, and Rock had some serious issues with that. But it is amazing how often somebody who could be an adversary, not necessarily an enemy, but definitely an adversary, you can end up being friends. Because like my best friend, my mate Ray, we didn't like each other when we first knew each other.
Yeah.
And now we're best mates. And it can be like that. Sometimes rivalries can turn into friendships. You know what I mean? Over time, because then it becomes a mutual respect. Because when you stay a rival with someone for such a long time, you can't help but end up respecting each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they liked each other on a professional level, but over time they became really good friends in real life. But then, seeing Mick Foley, I think the guy that they got to play Mick Foley, he looked way too fucking skinny too. I was like, there's some things about this that you're not going to get quite accurate, but Mick Foley, he was telling him like, "Oh, you're going over. Oh yeah, and we have to give a shout out to Colt Cabana too, because he played Brooklyn Brawler in this episode."
Oh, was that Colt Cabana? Okay,
yep.
okay. I was thinking to myself, he looks a bit familiar.
Yeah,
it was really good to see Brooklyn Brawler there, and like Rock expected to do the job to him.
Yeah,
but no, Rock was going to get the win, and we see his first match and stuff like that. And it was I remember like he goes out into the ring. And nobody knows who the fuck he is.
They're like,
Dwayne
who are
Johnson.
you? Yeah. And then Brawler's like, okay, dude, just follow me. I'll tell you exactly what to do. And he did it. And then he had a really good match. And then, long story short, Vince tells him, you're not ready for the WWF, but we're going to go ahead and send you down to Memphis, and we'll go on from there.
Yeah. What I take from it is just him and Stone Cold. Like, yes, Stone Cold has always come across as a down-to-earth guy, so it was really good to see that. I really appreciated that. That was great stuff. What's next?
And they did the throwback to the Ringmaster gimmick. Oh yeah, and they showed Mantar, which was hilarious too. I popped for Mantar.
And also, they actually like the way Steve Austin was going on. Like he felt he was going to get fired.
Yeah, because he didn't give a shit. Like he was like, if I get fired, I get fired. I'm like, yeah.
He just didn't think he was getting over, but he didn't realize that he would be one of the top 5 greatest of all time. But
okay, and then the backyard barbecue episode. Some would say this is the best episode in the season.
This was a brilliant episode.
It wouldn't be hard to argue that. Hawaii 1984, on the day of the backyard barbecue, Rocky's relationship with his tag team partner, Tony Atlas, hits a breaking point. Dewey becomes the object of multiple school crushes, And the trial finally reaches its conclusion. Andre the Giant played a hell of a role in the trial aspect of the episode.
Oh
he,
yeah, this was fantastic
he
because
fucking takes Greg Yao out and gets him drunk and gets him plastered.
well, we mentioned the fact that Andre the Giant can drink the whole planet under the table, so he
Oh
uses
yeah,
drinking prowess to get that guy drunk and obviously fuck up his court case,
yep,
which is how Rock's grandmother ended up winning after unsuccessfully trying to bribe everyone with fruit.
yep.
But then obviously like the beef between
Rocky
sorry,
and
actually
Tony.
before I go to that,
Yep.
Dewey becoming like a ladies' man at a young age, but he's a cute kid, man. So I could totally understand that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I mean, the boy who plays him is a very cute kid, so I could totally understand that. And but jumping from that to
The backyard barbecue was the highlight of the episode, just with the tension
fantastic.
of Rocky and Tony. Because what the backstory was I guess Ada had been watching soap operas, and she's like, "Okay, I'm going to incorporate this shit into pro wrestling," and it plays a role into like I think the episode following this. But they get into it, and Rocky flat out tells Tony on the radio, "I'm tired of you always getting the high tag, and you always take the credit. Like, why can't I get a moment for once to shine?" And then, long story short, Rocky and Tony, I forgot who they were working with at the barbecue. I think it was Piper and God, who was Roddy Piper's partner?
Was it Sergeant Slaughter?
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, but
I
okay.
mean,
Anyway, the heels
but
get
you know,
the yeah.
but the WWE would usually 9 times out of 10, the way this played out, that tag team was split. It was just. But I like the way this played out
I
because
like
this
they
was
did
actually
it.
more.
Yeah,
This was much more original. Like there was teasing the split, but it actually wasn't, which is why it made it even better.
yeah, because basically the heels, work over. Tony and Rocky escapes the cage. He's like, "Fuck this," and then he goes back to the back, and then you see him like tearing up shit as if he's frustrated, only to find
No,
pliers.
you missed out something, Jose. What it was
Okay.
is that they both had to escape the cage.
Yeah, they both had to get out.
But Tony accidentally Well, I mean, it's part of the story, but he in the work he elbows Rocky Johnson and makes him bleed, and Rocky's like really pissed off, and all of that, and so he decides to leave the ring. Or so when he escapes the ring, he doesn't give a fuck about his partner, and
they do the classic walk. They do the like you see it all the time. Like if you go back and watch WCW War Games '96 when Sting comes in and fights the NWO and then tells Luger to go fuck himself, and then Sting just walks to the back. I like how
the doors change as well. By the way,
yeah.
they sealed the door as well.
They lock the door. Yeah, that's why he has to go back to the back and get the pliers. But I like that little touch up that they did with Rocky going to the back. And I'm like, okay, as a wrestling fan, that was a really cool, subtle detail that they did. And then
it looked like he was turning heel in all of that, So yeah.
But then he goes back to the back, gets the pliers, breaks the door open, and I think Classy Freddie Blassie was the manager, if I remember right. Yeah, and then they basically win the fucking match, and then the barbecue goes over like gangbusters.
Yeah, that I would. I need to watch that pay-per-view.
Yeah,
I need to watch it, because that looks awesome. I would have popped big time for that shit. Yeah.
Okay, and then the next
10,
episode, Rocky's Code, Nashville, 1987. Rocky takes a promising new job, but is faced with a difficult decision. And Ada spends the night out with Miss Elizabeth drinking. And then teenage Dwayne starts to worry about his dad's health because Rocky is getting older and he's either at the twilight of his career or he's already past the twilight of his career. Because wrestlers go through this. Back in those days, you would come up through the territories. You would be either the top babyface or the top heel. And then after a while, you've been there, done that, and it's time to move on. And in Rocky's case, that's exactly what happened in real life, was that he was the big man. And then over time, Rocky started getting older. And you could even argue Rocky was past his prime during that point.
Yeah, he was getting injured, but this was the Macho Man episode. Yeah, I mean, this episode, like Randy Savage really was who he was out in the ring as he was out the ring. Like he had to he came, he spent some time with his friends, he took care of them while he was there.
Yeah,
but he also had to open up a Sears and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And he was
Yeah.
he was buzzing from opening up that scene. Like
He acted like he started working there.
Yeah.
That was fucking great. I was like,
like the manager's was saying to me, we're not going to actually pay you for all of this other additional stuff. He goes, I don't, it's okay, and I'm staying
the
here to
markout
get
moment was easily seeing a Slim Jim because I
Slim
know you
Jim,
popped for that. I was like, yeah.
I did, but I also thought it was fucking stupid.
It was
at the same
stupid, but
time.
you still popped. Like the little kid in you was like, yeah. Yeah.
But it's also nice just seeing like her and like Elizabeth. See, this is where I think it gets a bit vanilla because we always hear the stories about how possessive he was over Elizabeth, but we never saw any of that. In this episode, we didn't see a hint of that. What we did see was Elizabeth and Atta, having dinner together and obviously getting drunk because they can't stop talking about wrestling, and they're saying that every time we talk about wrestling,
they have to take a drink. Yep.
Yeah. So. And
they would get plastered. And then on Rocky's side of things, he, I think, went down to Jerry Lawler's territory because you're going to see a lot more of Jerry Lawler as we.
Was this the episode with Brian Christopher? No, that was
like later on. But you do get to see like Jeff Jarrett, I think, coming up.
Yeah. And this was the episode with the watermelon and fried chicken.
I think so, yeah. And then he's like,
yeah,
dude, I'm not selling out. I'm not doing this racist shit for money. Like, I'm gonna keep the money that I have because you already gave me $100.
Yeah, I'm gonna racist tax.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a racist tax, motherfucker. And then they're like, we do have this money we could go use, and then they fucking go splurge on like pancakes and waffles and all that shit just to go hit the gym the next day.
No, well, what happened in that scene was that they got that $100, so they decided to have a very fancy meal.
Yep.
They get because he's the soul man. He gets recognized, and he's a good guy. He's always been a baby face.
Yep.
So the meal is on the house.
Yep.
He plays the gimmick because he initially paid
giving her the tip anyway.
Bill.
Yeah.
He gave her the $100 bill as a tip anyway, and so that way he maintained his character as a face.
Yep.
As a baby face, which is fucking genius.
Because here's another thing too for you young ass kids. Because I feel sorry for you young kids that'll never get to experience kayfabe the way we did. Because back in the '80s, you lived your gimmick, even into the '90s too, up until the Attitude Era in reality. But
Ted DiBiase had it so good, man.
Oh yeah,
he had it so good because he had to portray somebody with lots of money.
Yep.
So Vince would have him on private jets and limousines,
first class hotels, all that shit.
Yeah, all of that shit. Yeah, so he lived that gimmick, which is fantastic. Nowadays, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now.
No. Now, kayfabe's dead. It's been dead. It'll never come back.
Yeah. So.
But I thought Rocky's Code. This is another one you need to see. Okay, and then we're getting into the finale because this is.
By the way, just regarding the code, code basically was that he wasn't going to
sell
fried chicken and play these racist gimmicks just for the sake of a job, and that was the code, and he stuck with his code. Which unfortunately meant that he never apologized to Vince McMahon and never got his job back within the WWE. But that's what
we're about to get into anyway.
Yeah.
So okay, going into the finale because this is a double episode. Memphis 1996. The WWF sends Dwayne to Memphis to develop his wrestling skills. When a booker bullies downtown Bruno, Dwayne fights back. And then in 2032, Dwayne and Julian finally have their confrontation type of deal that's been going on throughout this entire season. So discussing
and then we see Forrest Whitaker coming into the scene as well. First of all, Flex Kavana, what a fucking name!
What a stupid name!
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. Definitely of that era. I was actually going to call myself Flex Banana. That's what his grandma called him. On this, I forgot to do that.
The suggestion was teasing all the Rocky names, and Ada comes up with Rocky Maivia. I'm like, yeah, why not just fucking go with that? And then they ended up doing it anyway. And then Rocky goes, you could name yourself Rocky 2 or Rocky 3 or Rocky Jr., but not Rocky 4 because of Russia and all that shit. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, at the same time, is that he didn't want to be somebody he didn't want to be a legacy character, which he ended up being something he did at the beginning of his career, which he never really had to do later on in his career.
Yeah.
But he never wanted to be that, which is why he came up with Flex Kavana and stuff like that. But what he did for Bruno was fantastic.
Because in this too, I also have to point out the guy that played Jerry Lawler. Holy shit, where do they find these guys?
Yeah, he looked a lot like him, but he also then like we see what's his face?
You see Jeff Jarrett, and you see this is
Oh,
Brian Christopher too. You see him too,
and yeah,
because
we see Brian Christopher and we see
yep,
Bam Bam Bigelow finally,
yep,
like the real original Bam Bam Bigelow,
yep,
come into play. And this was the match where Rocky Johnson would and Bam Bam have a match,
yep.
and they get a contract to go to the WWE. No, that was a previous episode. I can't remember now. It's all getting bloody
Oh,
confusing.
well, we're covering it anyway, so let's just talk about it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they had a match where they was wrestle for a contract,
yep,
and if they get that contract, they go to the WWE, but the contract has to be signed with black ink, and obviously
yep.
Harvey Wimpleman
Genius.
used the red pen.
Fucking genius touch too, because that's something for old school fans. Like we would pop at that, but kids today would think it's like some of the stupid shit ever. But for us, it was like, yeah, we bought into that kind of shit back then. Like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
so and so has the contract. Oh, it's not signed in this kind of ink. Oh, that's fucked up. And then
so
like,
yeah,
yeah, and then like Downtown Bruno, it explores like the relationship between Dwayne and Downtown Bruno, and like the promoter Crane or the matchmaker Booker, whatever the fuck you want to call him, Crane, he sucked as a wrestler. Like they just buried him, and he was like,
yeah,
Crane's
exactly.
gimmick was fucking terrible. His finisher was fucking terrible. And then like Dwayne started listening to tapes of like
Yeah,
Don Morocco.
because his promos were quite shit before
Yep.
that. But then
Mm-hmm.
he started listening, and then he obviously became a prototype to what he ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
And he absolutely destroyed that Booker.
Yeah, he
And
buried him. He
yeah,
yeah. And then like Lawler comes out and then he's like, I'm gonna put the Continental Wrestling Association title on the line, and if you win, you're the champ. If you're not, you will be forced to leave Memphis forever. And then he's like, dude, what the fuck? You're going to the WWF, kid. Enjoy it. I'm about to beat your ass. And then meanwhile, Rock gives his like the cool thing that I liked was Rock gave all his thank yous like with his little subtle cues, like winking to the
what he,
cameraman and going to the announcer saying, I appreciate you, and thanking the
in the
referees. And
camel clutch and stuff
yeah.
like that, and he's
Mm-hmm.
smiling while he's getting pinned.
Yep.
Never
And
been
he's
so
like,
happy to lose.
it's never felt so amazing to lose. Yep.
Yeah,
And
that was great. Yeah,
and that's what you did back then. When you were on your way out, you jobbed. I don't think there
nine
was
times
ever
nine,
9 times out
no,
of 10 you did the
nine
job.
times out of 10. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
There's very rarely is there an exception to that, but 9 times out of 10, yeah,
Okay,
for
and then the
sure.
last episode of season 2. And by the way, we will be getting a season 3, so we may go over stuff we want to see. In 2032, Dwayne. Oh yeah, and by the way, Doctor Julian and Dwayne do make up. Not that that really matters, but they basically end up making up. Just as a fucking side note. But okay, in
Oh,
20,
is this the episode where like he repairs the ceiling
yeah,
of
Downtown
downtown
Bruno.
Bruno?
Yep, and
Okay, yeah,
yeah, Forrest Whitaker like goes on a monologue about like picking the right grape for them to make up and shit, and then they end up making up. And then okay, in 2032, the election goes up and down because it's a choice between 3 candidates: Dewey, some other dude, and an artificial intelligence. Yes, an artificial intelligence is in the running for president of the United States. And anyway,
I did find it. I was just to go on to the present day or the future even.
uh-huh.
I found it a bit stupid that all this beef was nipped in the bud when he just took a picture
Yeah,
with Julian. It's like that's it. That's
yeah.
all it took.
You built all
I
this
used
for that. Like the payoff to that was so stupid.
Yeah, I really thought that was stupid. Yeah, just so you could prove to his son, it was kind of like history repeating itself.
Yep.
But yeah, it was stupid.
And
But
then,
anyway,
okay, meanwhile, this is when Rocky started declining because Rocky and that are at a crossroads with their futures in pro wrestling. Because basically, what happens is to cover into this was also interesting. The grandmother, who was the MVP in certain spots of this entire season, she appoints Rocky or Hygief's tag partner from the 70s to be the vice president of the Polynesian Pro Wrestling Company. And Otto's
yeah,
like, what the fuck? And then Rocky tells her, like, start your own promotion. If you want to do this, do this. Meanwhile, at the same time, Rocky goes back and double books himself with a promoter in Saudi
well,
Arabia, and then books himself with Vince.
the grandma also said once again, like using the white person trope,
Yeah,
saying, regarding what we need a white person as the face,
yeah,
or we're not going to get anywhere. It's the same trope she used for the lawyers, using for this
hmm
guy, which is
yep,
why she chose him.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then, okay, and then in 1987, Dwayne has to move again to Nashville because that was at the time when Rocky's career, like I said, was on its way down. You get to see like Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler and all those other
he
guys
was a
that we
he
mentioned.
was a thieving fucking bastard, wasn't he? He was stealing
Yep.
all the time, cowboy hats, jackets, everything.
Yep. And Rocky was stealing shit too. And the shout out to the person that played the Fabulous Moolah, because I thought that was a cool throwback too.
Well,
You get to see her.
there's more of this vanilla side of this
Hmm.
whole series where it was Mula apparently was a bit of a bitch.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a
She was a
horrible
pimp
person.
too. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
a
like
pimp.
she like prostituting women out and stuff like that. So
But
the
they
fact that
painted her
they,
in a positive light. I didn't really like
yeah,
that, knowing what we know
yeah,
now.
yeah, exactly. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And obviously, we know about Brian Christopher not being too great a dude either. But I think out of
Yep.
respect to Jerry Lawler and the fact that he did know him as when they were kids, they portrayed him in a good light too. I
Yep.
mean, like I said, there's a lot of stories. I mean, there's we haven't had like 3 seasons going into a fourth season of Dark Side of the Ring for nothing. There's
Yeah.
a lot of bad shit in wrestling, and considering Rocky's been around wrestling since he was born, you know what I mean? He would have. I was surprised not that some really dark, disturbing stories haven't been brought up on the show, but it's not supposed to
And
be
I'm
like
gonna
that. So
and I'm gonna get into it for our expectations for season 3, because I know we're gonna talk about that. But okay, to wrap this all up, 1996, Dwayne finally gets the call to go to the WWF, as we mentioned, because uh, he lost to Jerry Lawler in the loser leaves town kind of title match. And then he shows up, and I love that he touched on this because this actually happened, where he missed the fucking hard camera. That was great. That popped me because Dwayne couldn't find the hard camera to save his life. And I like the guy that they got to play Goldust too, because I was like, all right, cool. They did a little subtle shout out to Goldust.
I have to rewatch that Survivor Series match because
Yeah, I
I,
do
I, I
too.
was totally I was totally oblivious to the hard camera thing.
Yep, yep.
But
You'll know it
it
when you
was
see it, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, I get it now.
but him talking to Vince, basically wanted to come up with a name, and Vince loved that legacy shit. So he
Yep,
was going to call it Rocky Maivia, the best of both worlds, granddad and dad in one name.
yep.
So yeah, he was gonna go down that route and stuff like that,
And
and
then
he
they
did,
made fun of his own gear. That was hilarious too.
yeah, and stuff
I
like
was
that.
going
He
to come
looked,
out like this total badass. Instead, I came out dressed up like the Lion King.
yeah, that was it. That was absolutely hilarious and stuff. But then we jumped to WrestleMania 13, I believe,
Yep,
where he fights was it Attila?
the Sultan.
The
Do you
Sultan,
know
that's
who
it.
played the Sultan?
Please enlighten me.
Rikishi.
Ah,
Yep.
interesting.
Hmm.
I know I no idea, but um we see that match pan out, and obviously it's not the way they portrayed it in the show was not how it is in the match. It
No,
really
if you go
isn't.
back and watch that match, it was not really a good match. It really
Uh,
wasn't.
but people weren't necessarily going Rocky sucks,
No.
and stuff like that, and people did pop a little bit when Rocky Johnson came out for the save.
The reaction was lukewarm at best if he really wanted to tell the truth.
Yeah,
He didn't get the Rocky sucks and die Rocky die chance until probably a couple months later after that, if I remember right. It took a
because
while
he
for that to happen.
that the period where he was Rocky Maivia was a very short period.
Yeah, it
I
didn't
mean,
last.
he transitioned into The Rock, very very quickly.
And
But that was
that's
when he turned heel.
okay. And then, long story short, the AI wins the fucking presidency. And they're going to pick this shit up in season 3. So, what I want to see in season 3 is obviously the Nation of Domination. That has to get talked about. Is how he got hurt, and then how he ends up joining the Nation of Domination, and they got to get D'Lo and Kama Mustafa and Mark Henry and those guys, and they got to get how The Rock and Shamrock worked at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental title. That's what I want to see, and more on the rivalry with Stone Cold. Obviously, are the things that I want to see
I guess. I mean,
happen in
but that
season
only
3.
that be a handful of episodes. We'll still get like more of the connecting the dots. Like we'll probably get the like what happens after Saudi Arabia and maybe his life or Rocky Johnson's life from like living it well to
Yeah.
falling to pieces, like the
Yeah.
beginning of living a shit life.
And I also want to see, because I know you do too, I want to see the show get more serious in season 3. I'd like to start seeing more dramatic stuff like, okay, like, the downfall of like Rocky Johnson, like when he's past his prime, when he knows, like, okay, my career's over. I want to see shit like that get touched upon as well on
I want to see
season
I
3.
want to see stuff like maybe the decline of Andre the Giant,
Yeah,
like
that too.
and stuff like that. When he started having to use crutches to be able to keep standing.
The end of the Polynesian Pro Wrestling Company. I want to see that. Yeah, there's some things I want to see in season 3. And then as far as like little Dewey, I don't know where they could go with young Dewey, with like
Well,
kid Dewey.
like I said, because at that time his dad had jumped ship to Saudi Arabia, left the WWE, double crossed Vince McMahon, and that would be like that period with little Dewey, who was living the life of Riley and living in fancy hotels and living in Hawaii, having to maybe move back to America and just seeing all the luxuries he had.
Yeah, because I
don't
think they expanded on that. Like they said that, but I want to see that like as kind of an episode arc too.
Yeah, just the transition, because we see him living a good life as a child, but a shit life as a teenager, and kind of a shit life as a young adult as well. But that transition, we haven't seen that.
Yeah, so that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I want to see that We've seen the transition of having a shit life turning into a wrestler and so on, but we haven't seen the transition of having a good life turning into a shit life.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting as well, for sure.
But I think if you're a wrestling fan, you need to see this show. I definitely think you need to see it.
But what they're going to do with the future day storyline, because he was running for president for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, where are they going to go with?
They can't repeat that.
Yeah, where are they going to go with future Rock?
Exactly, as well. And
I wonder what they're going to do with Randall, because I know Randall's just like there as like the side character, but I'd like to see like Randall like have more corny shit, because that's perfect for him. How they have him just be like that corny, goofy side character.
He could be like Rock's biographer.
Yeah,
and say like, and then Rock starts telling him more stories, so that that way, that way they could go down that particular route.
Yeah.
So that'll be a good way of explaining. But if they do a season 3, it needs to be the final season, because there's only so much you can tell.
Yeah, I think where I'd like to see it wrap up is maybe The Rock becomes maybe like they do something where like, oh, how The Rock became like one of the biggest baby faces of all time. Like that's where his adult storyline ends, and then they got to figure out what to do with like future Rock. I think that's how it should end.
They never mention any of the drugs or anything like that that's so involved in wrestling during his growing up period. I'm not saying that he did any. I'm just saying that he would have seen it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. None of that comes into play. Like don't treat us like fucking children. This is a PG era.
Yeah.
Show us some of that dark shit.
Like I want to see, the decline of Andre. I want to see the decline of Polynesian Pro Wrestling. I want to see Rocky past his prime, like when it's time to retire and your career is over. Shit like that is what they do for the more serious side.
When did his grandma die?
Let me find out.
Because that would be a big one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would be a big one. Okay, yeah, Leah Maivia. I just need to know more about his grandma, but they're probably not going to tell me anything. But, okay, Leah Maivia. Because I think she passed away probably not long after Rock got big. Okay, 2008. So yeah, it was kind of after Rock had already kind of retired.
Yeah. It's way too deep into his career.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy was already in Hollywood by then. He was and Peter Marbury died way before that. So
I think if they're gonna end it like from a wrestling standpoint, end it when he fucking jobs to like Brock Lesnar or Goldberg or whatever the fuck. Like whenever he started taking his exits, is where they could end it. If they really wanted to, because I don't see.
I think when he becomes a Hollywood star.
Yeah, that's when they should end it as a wrestler.
For sure. Like when he gets like maybe not the Lion King, the Scorpion King, or
Yeah, like have WrestleMania 17 be the end of like the wrestling side of The Rock. Like, oh, okay, I would lose to Steve Austin, like, and then go on my way to be one of the biggest Hollywood star and that kind of shit. Like,
no, but it
is
would
where
be
they could end it.
good to see like an episode with him, like doing Hollywood stuff, like being
Mm-hmm.
in that movie and learning to be an actor and all of
Yep.
that sort of stuff, transitioning what he did as a wrestler into acting. That would be fascinating. To
Mm-hmm.
see an episode or two of that, but that would be the best way to end because really he's like, it, that's really when he became bigger than the company, bigger than wrestling, and
And
he
now
became a
you'll never
Hollywood star.
Yeah, WWE, they'll never allow that now. I mean, John Cena's doing the same damn thing, and Vince is like, God damn it, we can't have that. I
You
can't
know
have
what?
my own stars
John
be bigger
Cena,
than me.
like he deserves it. Like he's been in the company for a long time. He deserves
His
to
20th,
do so.
here's how old we are. His 20th anniversary is next month. God, we're getting old.
God, it feels like honestly, it feels like he's been there longer than 20 years. To tell you
I
the truth,
know. I know.
but
Same thing with Randy Orton. I'm like, because Randy Orton had his 20th anniversary last month. I was like, it's been 20 years of Randy Orton already. God, where did the time go? I
it's been
was a
20 years of Brock
teenager.
Lesnar. Yeah,
Yeah.
2002 Brock Lesnar debuted.
Shelton
Around about then.
Benjamin. I mean, damn. Like,
Yeah,
God, like
yeah.
we're getting
Rey
old now.
Mysterio as well,
Yeah.
like 27, 20. He's been around for 20 years. Like in the WWE days, he's
Mm-hmm.
one of the seriously last old school guys who's still got something to offer at the top level, in my opinion.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, that was basically the season. I'll give it it's funny the way I do have my criticisms and some valid ones, but I enjoyed it, especially
Yeah.
with the moments that made me pop when you see certain names and certain wrestlers and stuff like that. I like the way when you get like a famous person, you get like a like a label on their head on the
Yeah.
side.
When they showed up, when they showed the Undertaker, like locker room leader, and then goat status, and it had like 10 goats, and then like
Yeah,
Stone Cold, like main evented WrestleMania's 6-time WWE champion, one of the toughest sons of bitches around, and then like Pat Patterson, Intercontinental Champion, et cetera, et cetera. I like the little tags that they did, like when they
well,
introduced, like, this is who this is type
like
of deal.
like with Pat Patterson was gay, and I like the fact that in one of these episodes, they mentioned how like that particular family were ahead of its time when it came to not discriminating against gay people, so much so that like French Polynesian wrestlers were very much respected because you wouldn't want to fuck with them in real life.
Yep.
They would
When
fuck you
Peter
over. So
Maivia kissed Pat Patterson and no one
yeah,
ever fucked with him after that. Yeah.
yeah, that was great. That was so
Mm-hmm.
great. I loved it. There's
Yeah.
little things, you know what I mean? So yeah, but
But
yeah, I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
yeah, I'm going to give it an 8. But what's the episode you say people need to see? I say the one with Corpus
Yeah,
Christi is the one you need to see.
8, yeah. Episode 8 without a doubt. The Corporate Christie one
Yeah.
is without doubt the pop out episode with all those amazing moments, especially when he's in that locker room
Yep.
and stuff like that. But I think
that
the
and the
most emotional episode is episode 9.
Yeah, that and the backyard barbecue episodes are the best episodes of this entire season, in my view.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah,
overall, like every episode, if you know you're wrestling, every episode's pretty good.
yeah. If
But
you're
yeah,
if you're an old
yeah.
school fan, go watch Young Rock. It's fucking great.
All right, then. Well, look. Thank you very much for watching. Anything more to say on this show, Jose?
No, we're just gonna be back when it's time to do season 3 in about a year.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that. So roll
Yep.
on.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, let us know what you guys think of Rock Season 2. Leave a comment below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest YouTube channel you never heard of. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.